15 chilling killer stories, according to Reddit. Number 15. I deployed with Eddie Ray Routh, who later went on to kill Kyle, aka the American Sniper. The talk about him made me abundantly aware of the fact that all veterans have a tough time getting help with their medical health after we come back. Combat veterans face social pressure to man up. But non-combat veterans get the plus accusations that they're lying because they think only combat can cause PTSD. We saw some shit in Haiti. It wasn't combat, but it fucked me up nonetheless. I still can't eat mango without running the risk of uncontrollably sobbing because the taste instantly reminds me of what it was like. One bite and I feel the humidity. I smell the burning garbage and the pig shit from the 2 feral pigs that we accidentally fenced into our camp. I see refugee camps with people living in tents made of their own clothes, holding signs that say, "America help." I'm there again, and I never saw combat. But try telling that to 90% of the post 9/11 veterans, and the response is, "Bullshit, you fucking pussy. You didn't even go to Iraq." Routh was there in Haiti with me. Not only that, but I know for a fact that he took MacLeod for 7 months because everyone in our berthing on the USS Bataan had to take it. MacLeod is no longer given to troops because one of its primary side effects is permanent neurological damage that mimics PTSD symptoms. What the fuck? Our government is fucking crazy, dude. Can treat and prevent malaria, but at what cost, my nigga? As soon as people heard that he didn't see combat, there was a goddamn dog pile to say that he was just a piece of shit and it couldn't be PTSD. Oh boy. In the interest of clarity, the thread we're reading from asks people who have known murder serial killers, how did it fuck you up? And then there's another list after this that I'll skim through. Number 16. I've never really known how to make sense of it, but the story goes, circa 2002, a group of my friends were in a car driven by a guy that we'll call Sean. Sean was the cousin of 2 of them, and Sean was a bit of a prick. So, Sean thought it would be fun to go racing with them in the car. Sean was also not very good as far as drivers go, so after accelerating along a long straight, Sean approached a roundabout. He braked too hard, came off-road, hit a lamppost, and killed everyone in the car apart from himself. Damn. What happened after that isn't entirely clear. I know there was a major family feud, as you'd expect when one cousin kills 2 others, and I know that Sean had a major row with his mother. Sorry, I know that word is typically pronounced row, but I don't know why they always say row when it's like pertaining to a fight with a person. What happened there, though, only Sean knows. The police couldn't find anything other than the traces of her blood. She hasn't been seen since. Sean has never been convicted, apparently due to lack of evidence. I still don't know what to make of it. Holy shit. Oh, that's not where I thought this was going. Okay. Number 14. One day I was working on a family tree, and I'm quizzing my mom about different names and connections, shit like this. Then out of nowhere she tosses out, "And then there was old Aunt Tilly, who strangled a little boy in her living room." Wait, what? She explained that Tilly started hearing voices, and there was a little boy who used to always come by in the afternoon for cookies. One day he came in and she strangled him to death and was found wandering the streets babbling to herself. She was in an insane asylum for 7 years and was then released and died shortly thereafter. Though I never knew this relative, that I found a newspaper article about it and was haunted by the image of the little boy and wondered about how many generations of his family were affected by this horrible event. Jesus Christ. Someone says they had an aunt named Zilla who raised her illegitimate child in her attic for 12 years. Jesus Christ. Number 13. I have known more than one. The most recent was my next door neighbor. After all his immediate friends and family were dead, he started making overtures toward me. I'm an older woman. You would think I would be safe by now. I would dash inside my house whenever I saw him outside, and as the details of the deaths came out and the police investigation heated up, he committed suicide. Everyone left who knew him was very glad that he was gone. It's been about 7 to 8 years now, and the memories have faded. He killed both his mother and his wife at separate times. His drug dealer, his next girlfriend, and her ex-boyfriend. None of these folks were less than 50 years old. It's not always the young guys who screw up. If he had prior victims, he took that knowledge to the grave with him. I have a close call about 30 years ago, living in a seedy motel that had been converted to efficiencies. It was known there was a serial killer in the area. He would watch young women in bars, figure out who came alone and in what car. Then he would flatten their tires and be the kind stranger who offered to help them when they wanted to go home. Their bodies were being found in a few days after each one went missing. What a way to phrase that sentence. He killed the daughter of a very close friend. I was napping one day. I worked nights, and a noise woke me up. I did not identify the noise, but when I saw the closet door ajar, I immediately ran outside to a neighbor for help. I am obsessive about closing doors when I sleep. The door was wide open, and when we returned to investigate, there was a footprint in the middle of the bed where I had been sleeping. It was clear the intruder had left via the very large window immediately next to the bed. A few days later, the killer was caught. He had been working at the seedy motel/efficiency as a handyman, and I am convinced that I was extremely lucky that time. I generally gravitate to the outcast in any group to try to ferret out their story. I can't help it. I have come across many more really scary ones, some very interesting ones, and lots of plain sad ones. I feel I am so very lucky not to have suffered more than I did, and the best part is that I'm still alive. Number 12. My aunt on my paternal side killed her 5-month-old baby. Broke into the neighbor's basement, tried to hide his body there. Prior to this event, the family was very close. My dad was one of the 6 children, and after their father, my father, shot and killed himself, they became closer. The day it happened, my aunt called her husband at the time and said that the baby was missing. He rushed home only to find her perfectly calm and showing very little panic or worry. He felt it was odd and called the police after discovering that what she had done? It didn't take long for the neighbor to discover the baby in their basement because the door from the outside looked as though it had been tampered with. So they checked it out after hearing about the disappearance of my cousin. He was wrapped up in 2 towels and placed in a box with dishes. It wasn't long before clues were all pieced together and it was found that she drowned him in the bathtub. She never had an ounce of remorse, and when my uncle asked why she'd do something like that, her answer was because I hated him. This tore up my family pretty bad. Half believed she was innocent due to some sort of insanity, therefore couldn't have done things like this or wouldn't have done this in her right mind, and the other half chose to have absolutely nothing to do with her. Now, the family is divided, and they very rarely speak to another without tension being really high. It makes me sick to think that she would be let out of jail relatively soon. I'm disgusted by her and by the part of my family that truly tries to stick by her and blames everything and everyone for her actions except for her. To answer your question, I reacted like anyone would to hear about the death of their baby cousin. I was devastated. Once I found out my aunt did it, I felt sick for weeks because she and I are of the same family, and I immediately wished I belonged to another. I still feel sick when I think about it, all these years later. Number 10. I went to school with a popular guy. He was on a pro athlete team, but always kept to himself. He seemed to only interact with others when he was playing with his teammates, but he wasn't awkwardly quiet or anything. He said hey, he smiled at others. He was a cool, content guy. But then, he was on the news for killing his girlfriend, his girlfriend's mom, and the little sister. It was a domestic violence situation until he decided to take things further, I guess. Police found him walking down the street with blood all over him. It just seems weird because you know this person, and it makes you wonder what made them react to so excessive an extent. Number 9. When I was in middle school, I lived a street over and went to school with a kid whose older brother murdered his parents with a hatchet and sliced up his siblings. It was horrible. It was horrifying. His sister was in my class. She survived. Barely. She moved him away afterwards, and the parents died in the attack. She, her older brother, and the 6-year-old boy survived. The youngest left the house while the boy was killing the rest of his family. and wandered the street with hatchet marks on his face and body. Eventually, he walked up to a neighbor's house and they called the cops for him. The boy who killed his family attempted to run away through the open sewers, away from the house from the cops. He escaped for a few hours, but was eventually captured. It was really strange afterwards. The front glass door had a small bloody handprint on it from where the littlest one had tried to escape, and 2 of the front windows had blood on them. The girl I went to school with spent a long time in the intensive care unit, and I walked by their house often to get to my best friend's house. There was caution tape around it for months. Then the tape fell, and no one did anything. I remember thinking that there seemed to be no justice for the family that lives are so fragile. The boy that snapped and killed his family used to walk by my house every day on his way home from school. He went to Grissom High School. I think he was older than I was by a few years at least. He used to say pretty normal things like, "I like your dog," but in the most creepy way. That once my mom even cried after talking to him. "I like your dog." What the fuck you talking about? He wore all black, gothy stuff. His window at his house had like a pentagram sticker on it and some anarchist stuff. He lived in the corner room. After I found out, I cried pretty hard. I couldn't understand what happened to my friend and her family. The middle school I went into a sort of mourning. I never saw that girl again, but I hope that she's doing okay. I hope that people don't experience this kind of thing in their lives early on, or ever, really. Because it really messes them up the closer they are to it. I'm not a serial killer, but I am a depressed person, and I know that part of it was seeing the darkness in others so early on in life. What, you little motherfucker? Hmm. Number 8. I found when I was like 13 that both my grandfather and uncle had killed. I never met either of them. They were both on my dad's side of the family. My grandfather basically beat a woman to death, and I guess they described as him giving her a hysterectomy with his bare hands. My uncle killed 2 people. The first one, he stabbed a guy like 80 times, slit his throat ear to ear, and then cut him from balls to throat. He wrote on the walls with the guy's blood, kinda Charles Manson-like. The second person was a woman that he met at a bar. He stabbed her around 70 times and dismembered her. I guess the big reason why they both went off the deep end and killed somebody is because they got extremely wasted and got very angry for whatever reason. At least that's what I was told. Jesus. Well, number 7. I knew James Holmes in college. He was 1 year ahead of me, but same major. I remember taking classes with him. He also did a bit of research in the Bavaria, and so did I. but in separate labs, so our paths often crossed. I remember him being super paranoid. I remember filling out health questionnaires or medical clearance forms for a final that required in vivo work and access to the vivarium. He threw a fit in our lab, telling our TA he wasn't going to fill it out. He finally did, but put a disclaimer on the bottom of it. It was bizarre. I think it was around 08 or 09. I think he was already unraveling at this point. I remember when I found out about Aurora. And for those who don't know, this douche shot up a movie theater, I believe, right? Am I thinking of another guy? Yeah, no, he shot up a movie theater. Scumbag. Punk bitch. Virgin hoe. I remember him being super paranoid. I remember filling out health questionnaires, and I remember reading this paragraph. I remember when... Really, niggas? There's a lot of remembers in this motherfucker. I remember when I found out about Aurora, and I was working when my college roommate texted me asking if I heard about the shooting in Colorado, followed shortly by her texting me who did it. My roommate remembered him clearly from a GE class that we both took with him. I remember feeling scared for some reason when I put the name to the face. My teeth started chattering wildly. I was shagged. It still freaks me out to this day remembering working in his labs and having class discussions with that guy. We were definitely not friends, but I probably saw him nearly every day for at least a couple of years. I can still see him working across from me under a fume hood in my mind's eye. Anytime his name is brought up. Bing. Bong. I'm not sure how people go the entire day forgetting I exist and then decide that it's time to text when I'm streaming. Maybe you all didn't hear, but a popular streamer by the name of Dr. Disrespect had somebody drive by his home. Ain't that shit wild? And when I say drive-by, of course, I mean, bust a drive-by shooting on that ass. You know what I mean? Pretty cowardly shit. Just scares me that, we live in a day and age where, maybe people don't really give a shit about celebrities as hardcore as they used to. But what we do is maybe we listen to somebody jump on a microphone. Maybe they're playing a game. Maybe they're just having a podcast, But can you imagine being so unhinged, so potentially jealous, so eager and thirsty for attention that you're gonna go shoot this guy? What did he do to you, my dude, that justifies that? Pretty intense. It's a shame, man. It's like this is why we can't have nice things. I can't imagine how discouraging it must be to just want to put on a show and try to make it in your own way and then have some fuck ruin that. Somebody in the thread discussing the drive-by shooting with Dr. Disrespect brought up that that YouTube girl who was a pianist who, was at an event and a fan just came up and shot and killed her ass. What did she do to deserve that? Nothing. She didn't deserve that. So, number 7. I just read. Number 6. My sister's ex-boyfriend is in jail currently for killing his next girlfriend and putting her body into a cement-sealed barrel. It's funny when you phrase it next girlfriend, it's as if she's not like, she wasn't his current girlfriend, you know, maybe she wasn't ready. He had to kill her first to make her necro appealing, you know? Then and only then can she evolve into his waifu. It's so awful for that girl and her family, but all I can think is what a suicidal revenge mission I would be on if that happened to my sister. It keeps me up at night. It's kind of sad. This entry is pretty sad. It's short but sad. Not short but sweet. Short but sad, because you see one unhinged asshole that's killing a lady in his life, then killing another woman. And then you have the storyteller's perspective saying, if this shit happened to somebody that was in my family, that they would just go unhinged and fucking murder right there. An eye for an eye and the world goes blind. But hey, man, some actions are fucking terrifying in a way where they demand consequences. You know what I'm talking about? And it's terrible, but, you know, humans are emotional creatures. And some people are just fucked up. And when they do some of the shit that they do, you're not thinking about, oh, can they be rehabilitated? Can they be brought to terms with their actions? Can they see the error of their ways? Am I to turn the other cheek in some biblical fucking bullshit? Or, you know, if I had a button that would bomb their house, would I just press that motherfucker? And the answer is, no, I can't do that. I'm the president. But if somebody came in and said, look, man, I make the weapons around here and I need to keep the wheels turning. If I give you $3 million right now, will you just press that button? Come on, press the button, bomb the house. And I would say, nigga, $3 million. I'm the president. You know who you're talking to? And he said, did I say million? I meant billion. And then the president goes, that's better. I'll let you press the button this time. Number 5. Sort of off topic, but when Ted Bundy was in prison, his favorite reporter to speak with was my cousin. She still has the Christmas card that he sent her one year, and they had a falling out while he was on death row. I think he sent her death threats. Damn, Ted Bundy. Damn. Ted Bundy worked on a suicide hotline. His coworker during the late lone hours in the middle of the night was actually researching and talking about the murders to him during their shared shift as he was going about killing people during off-work hours. She says she never felt afraid, never suspected him. She has been a police officer and now writes true crime. It took her many years to accept that he was a serial killer capable of doing that. She finally was able to write a book called The Stranger Beside Me. She says, oddly enough, he saved more lives on that suicide hotline that he ever took. And that chilled her. Oh, you stupid bitch. What don't you women understand? To some guys, life is just a game. And all you are notches on a belt. And if that's not cruel enough, allow me to phrase it in a way that your fucking mind can embrace and grasp, my dude. When you treat life as a challenge, as a true video game, you know what I'm talking about? I want you to put it in a perspective that you can understand. Maybe that means it's analogy time to make things real simple, my dude. Say you hate people. Say you hate your parents. And I say that in two separate ways because your parents aren't people. Comedy, waka waka. So you play a mini game. It's called Come Off as Normal. It's called, engage in small talk without it seeming dismissive, and just enough for you to seem genuinely invested, but not enough to extend the conversation any longer than it needs to. Maybe you consider that game a game that you're really good at, talking to people in a way that makes it seem that you don't fucking hate them when you fucking do. A game you're pretty good at. Some people are good at this in a way that would blow your fucking mind. Charismatic in a way where you could literally have them talk you off a fucking bridge. My dude, willingly. They could say just the right things. They could tell you what you want to hear. And in this instance, it seems that Ted Bundy was capable of taking a person back from the brink of suicide on them hotlines. Didn't make him any less of a murderer, though. And much like him playing a game where he's going to try and convince somebody to do something that they don't want to do, it's like a debate. It's like a game of coercion. Can I get you onto my side? Come join my camp. Your way of thinking is incorrect. Have you thought of it like this? How easy then would it be to coerce somebody into trusting you just for a little while? You'll have your life to go back to. Just come fuck around with me for a little bit. It ain't that big a deal. But maybe that's their life. Number 4. I knew a kid in the Boy Scouts who moved to a different town and beat a homeless man to death when he was 17. I wasn't terribly surprised. I'd heard some stories about him killing kittens when we were younger, and I suspected that his adopted father, our scoutmaster, was the molester. And now it's a real Kyle list. Congratulations. Number 3. This year, a coworker sent me a news post of a murder. The news mentioned a guy with a name that I didn't really recognize, but it said that he was 2 years older than me. He graduated from the same college on the same major. I look up the name on Facebook and I immediately recognize him. I had a couple of classes with him, and he was the president of my major's student association. He beat his girlfriend to death, stayed inside the house with the body for more than 3 days, and then killed himself with a plastic bag. It surprisingly affected me more than I expected, since I barely even knew the guy, but I felt sick the whole day. It didn't impact me much after, but it sucks. The poor girl was highly involved in non-profit organizations, and they looked like a fine couple. Strange world. I wish we had more of that story. Montreal. Number 2. God damn. Let's pick up the pace. This is a longer entry. When I was in high school, one of my friends murdered his family kinda out of nowhere. The day it happened, it started to get around to my friends that something went down at his house. This was before most people had cell phones, and texting wasn't a thing at all. We get it. The dark ages. So throughout the day, more and more people were contacted and headed over to the guy whose name was Andy's best friend's house. The first officers on the scene got his name and his brother's name mixed up, and we were all told that his brother had snapped and shot their parents and then him, then called the police and gave himself up with no struggle. So we all got together, mourned as a group or whatever, then got up and went to school the next day. Shortly into the first hour of class, everyone who was a known friend of Andy's was pulled out of the class and called into the office. Once we were all there, the principal told us that Andy was alive and that he had actually been the one who committed the murders. Everyone was pretty shocked. This dude was a totally harmless stoner who never so much as really seemed to disagree with anyone, much less he have violent tendencies. I personally went to my standard compartmentalization/disassociation mode and just dealt with it by going kind of numb. The funeral was really rough. They had an open casket viewing, even though his parents were both shot in the face. Andy claims to have no memory of doing it. And what they've pieced together is that he, for whatever reason, went to his dad's gun locker, pulled out a rifle, and shot his parents in their kitchen. It didn't look like there was any kind of struggle. His brother came up from the basement and he shot him at the top of the stairs. He then called the police, told the dispatcher that his parents were dead, and when she asked who killed them, he said he had. He went outside, stood on the lawn, waiting for the police to come, and once they got there, he went into a full panic asking about his brother. He had no idea that he'd shot him. He got 18 years for each murder and was sent to prison. I wrote to him here and there in the beginning, but his replies just felt really strange to me. I feel a little bit guilty now about fading out of his life, but it was honestly really hard to reconcile the person that I was friends with the person I was writing to, the person who killed his family. He sounded very stiff and hollow in replies. I guess that makes some sense. I keep up with the details through a friend who still keeps in touch with him. He tried to escape a few years ago. The guy he was trying to escape with was killed in the process, and his sentence was upped to life. I check his profile in the Michigan Offenders search page sometimes, but it makes me pretty sad to see him. He's gone all white power, I'm sure to save his ass, which is bizarre considering how 100% anti-racism he was prior to all of this. I don't know how it affected me really, other than my senior year in high school was a little fucked up because of it. There was a weird thing where a lot of people who didn't know him or weren't friends with him got really into the whole mourning thing, and maybe they took advantage, but they went to this group therapy thing that the school administrators had going for a while, and I had to have mandatory counseling along with a few other friends. But I wasn't really into it, and I had nothing to talk about. Not exactly the same as a serial killer, but it was all pretty fucked up. I'm 30 years old now. Whenever it comes up, I feel very disconnected. Number 1. In grade school, I sat next to this guy named George, super quiet, and occasionally I would go over to his house after school. His mom would occasionally be our substitute teacher. Fast forward to when I was in college and go to pick up a New York Post in the morning. I see a headline that says, 3 strikes, she's out. Kid beats mom to death with baseball bat. What a headline. The New York Post is a piece of shit. 3 strikes, she's out. That ain't a real headline, my dude. That ain't a real headline, my dude. What am I looking at here? Alright. Maybe it is a New York Post head. Maybe the New York Post is trash and we don't know anything about it. Because words printed on parchment. What kind of... There was a photo of George and his mom. It was big news in New York for a brief period of time, and last I heard, he was sent to jail. Fast forward a few years later, and I am working in Manhattan, and I literally bump right into him on the subway platform. Apparently, he got out after a few years, and it was seriously the most awkward small talk I've ever made with someone in my life. I found the New York Times article. Why would a kid... How could he get out after a few years? An 18-year-old Queens youth who attends New York University beat his mother to death with a baseball bat after an argument over his grades.
Oh yeah, Mom? Oh yeah? You don't think my grades are good enough? How would you grade this swing, Mom? Pow! Mom, you want to see it again? Pow! How about another, Mom?
He had a B+ average, but apparently that wasn't good enough, Mom. He felt that he was being constantly pressured to be better, said Deputy Chief Joseph R. Borelli, commander of Queens Detectives. That's a good about Ellie. Sorry. Okay, look, I'm done with this. You get what I'm saying? Oh my God. I could read another one. But who's watching these? You know? I've prepared another list that I should probably just separate. I think I should just separate it. So for those of you who are watching on YouTube, then maybe you enjoyed this list. You know, like the video. There's a Discord link in the description. There's tons of links in the description. There's Amazon link. Go there, buy something. There's like Streamlabs links. Send me donations in the middle of the night. They'll wake me up. You can also put a message in there. It'll be like a private text. Even though you have the ability to Snapchat me, which most of you abuse for really, really shitty memes, dude. My God. I'm not judging you or anything. But you know what they say about being able to make a first impression only once. Specifically, I want to thank all of you for being here. And I want to thank my sponsors via YouTube. And I want to thank my hardcore patrons. I may record another list here. But maybe I shouldn't. Maybe I'll save it for tomorrow in the daytime. Yeah. I love you. Thanks for doing what you do.